There, viewers, this is Adam with ArcadeHeroes.com, here to talk about the 3 Ts coming in May. And so we're going to talk about the latest, hottest video games coming to the video arcade market. And so let's jump right in. Arcade Heroes. We've got 3 video games coming to us in May 2018, each starting with a T, so that's why I say the 3 Ts. We have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles by Raw Thrills, we have Tomb Raider by Adrenaline Amusements, and we have Transformers Shadows Rising by Sega Amusements. And so we've covered each one of these games in some detail. Got some hands-on footage of each one as we've seen them at trade shows like IAAPA or Amusement Expo. And so with the upcoming release of each of these hitting in May, soon all of you will be able to go out there and search for one. Hopefully, if you have any sort of arcade near you, whether it's a Dave & Buster's, Round 1 USA, or an independent arcade that likes to try and stay up to date with some of the latest releases, then chances are pretty good that you can find one of these games. But as for why all of these are hitting at the same time in May, well, arcade companies in general like to try and get all of their latest products out right before the summertime hits. For some companies, summertime's pretty good, especially if you're in a tourist sort of area. For my arcade, summertime's usually our best time of the year, outside of the Christmas season, and just because when school's out, we're busy. And so yeah, it varies. I've heard of some places out there which may not be in a touristy type area, which may not be very busy during the summertime, but I think for the most part, most of us are. And so they try and get all the game releases that they can out in the months prior to that. And so that's why we can expect to find these games around that time. So first off with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you've probably seen a few of the videos that I've recorded of that for the channels here. And what I played in Vegas at the Amusement Expo, I still enjoyed it from what I played at IAAPA. It was slightly different as far as the improvements to the, well, I guess content more than the gameplay. It still played the same as I could recall. I didn't find any issues in how you would go through and beat up the bad guys from the Foot Clan. I've still read of some people out there that are disappointed that it's not based on the 1989 cartoon like the Konami ones were, but you got to be realistic with that. Raw Thrills obviously making this to appeal to modern audiences and not just people that went out to see Ready Player One, and so that's why it's based on the more modern license that kids are going to be familiar with. But the gameplay where it plays like a lot like, say, Konami's Turtles in Time, it still is satisfying in that regard. And so yeah, I know some people are going to nitpick over it and not going to be happy with it either way. You know, whatever. It's a fun game to play from what I have played of it, and to me that's mostly what's important, not which version of the Turtles that you're playing there. It still has the 4 Turtles, it still has the Foot Clan, it still has Baxter and Rocksteady and Bebop, and yeah, they do look different, and Bebop, I think it was, looked a little weird, but I know that was just all from the Nickelodeon cartoon series that went between 2012 and 2017, I believe it was. But again, to me, it's more about how the game plays. Being a beat-em-up, a brawler, that's not something that we've really seen in Western arcades for a long time. Even in Japanese arcades, there haven't been many brawlers. The last one that really comes to mind would be Sega's Asian Dynamite, which I think was 2006. And that one was a lot like Die Hard Arcade or Dynamite Cop or Dynamite Deca, just depending on which one you might be familiar with. But again, that's not a lot. China's put out a few, like IGS has, they're Taiwanese. IGS has had Oriental Legend 2 and Knights of Valor 3, I think it was. And those were great games, but they got very, very little exposure out here in the West. And so for me, it's really refreshing to see a brawling game. in the arcade. Again, I've been hearing that it's been doing very well on its location tests, and so that's always a good sign for people like me that would be buying the game. I do plan on getting one, so should have more video of that whenever it arrives. I'm being told sometime May, but don't know exactly when. Hopefully they're right here on May 1st or May 2nd, whenever the calendar is. But either way, I was very happy with the game, and I think most gamers will be too. Sure, there's always things to nitpick on just about any game, especially when it's being based on a beloved franchise, but yeah, it's still a fun game to play. And then we have Tomb Raider by Adrenaline Amusements and Square Enix and Crystal Dynamics. I've been trying to get more information on this one as to more technical details and development details, but I haven't had much luck on that. For whatever reason, they just haven't responded to all of my questions. So I'm not 100% sure who it is that's behind the redesign of this game, because it is based on the 2013 Tomb Raider release. Of course, it's in a cabinet that is a bit distinctive, although it was a cabinet that was first designed for Rabbids Hollywood by Adrenaline Amusements and Ubisoft, that we first saw at IAPA 2017. And then, of course, I think it was January that we saw the Tomb Raider showing up at Dave & Buster's. And so the release version, I was surprised to find out that it would be releasing in May, because initially Dave & Buster's had been saying that the full release version would be coming later in the year, and when they said later, I kind of assumed more towards like after summer was over or something like that. But I think for any operators that are really interested in it, and also where the movie didn't do incredibly well, maybe a bit under expectations, although I'm not sure whose expectations were anybody expecting it to do something like The Force Awakens or Avatar. But probably with that, might have pushed the date up. But the wide release version is supposed to be different as far as content goes from the Dave & Buster's versions. The Dave & Buster versions has, I think it's one level, but split into 3 chapters, and each chapter takes several minutes to play through. And I got to play that at Amusement Expo as well, and did find it to be a decent shooter, although I only played single player. I'm sure it's a different experience when you're playing with 4 people, because, well, for one, on Tomb Raider you have this 120-inch display, and so when you're playing single player it feels a little too big. And something like that, I think it would be nice if they released a 1 to 2 player version. A conversion kit for old pistol shooters would be really welcome too, for a lot of operators, because we haven't had anything like that since Friction, I think it was, and that was 2011. But yeah, Tomb Raider Arcade, it's a bigger experience, supposed to be the 4-player multiplayer, and things can get a little hectic and busy when you're doing that. Hard to say on the enemy design, just seemed like typical grunts or shooting wolves that were coming at you. Did kind of like collecting treasures and things of that nature. That was interesting. At least they added a little bit more there. You're not playing as Lara Croft in that game. You're playing as somebody helping her try to escape from the island. And it has these long cutscenes, but usually people would skip those when I was playing that. But also in a busy trade show environment, it's not always good to sit there through long cutscenes. And I was kind of surprised, at least for one that I was watching on the side before I started playing it, just how long it was. Usually in arcade games things are a little snappier than what you get on the console versions. The graphics looked nice. I would guess this is based more on the 2014 edition that went to the PS4 and the Xbox One, because it did seem like it was in full 1080p, ran at 60 frames a second. Textures looked pretty good from what I recall. But I don't know how this has been performing at the Dave & Buster's, if they've been doing really well with it or not. I know one location I've heard about said that the Injustice arcade by Raw Thrills has been getting a lot more play than Tomb Raider. but it's just one location, so who knows. But on Tomb Raider, I should mention, I did like the pistols to a degree. The way they were shaped and the way they felt was very nice. The force feedback was nice. The reload feature is interesting, where you have to pull the top of the gun back to reload. There's no infrared sensor net around the monitor like you get on a lot of LCD light gun games, and also what I noticed is when your gun would shake from the force feedback, your reticle would also bounce around the screen, but that took some adjustment while playing to get used to. Just because you're trying to be accurate with certain things because you get more points for headshots and whatnot, and then when the gun's bouncing around when you're pulling the trigger a lot, just from your own hand movement, but also from the force feedback and where all the position sensors are within the gun, yeah, it makes it bounce around a bit. But yeah, it was just something that took a little bit of getting used to. But anyways, moving on to Sega's next effort, and that was also shown at Amusement Expo. It was not at IAAPA. It was supposed to be at IAAPA, and then it got pushed back to EAG, and then it wasn't at EAG, and then it showed up at Amusement Expo, and so finally was there. Wasn't the final cabinet design, was close to final. After the show, Sega released an image of the cabinet that showed something that was supposed to be more final. Also, strangely, within the game, they added this new control element, kind of like Dead Storm Pirates, how Dead Storm Pirates has the pirate wheel for you to use during certain scenes. Transformers 2, I'll call it. It has this hypertech energy lever, and so it's basically just a joystick. What they put on there was just a typical up-down shifter, kind of like what you would find on Outrun 2, but it wasn't connected, so none of those scenes worked when you were supposed to either push it forward to do a special hyper attack or pull it back to do a hyper defense. And so you're supposed to strategically decide as to the situation as to what to do with that, to use it when certain events pop up on the screen. But yeah, since it wasn't connected there, even with the wrong joystick, couldn't really get a good feel for how that was supposed to be inside of the game flow. But Sega did release a picture showing a much better, nicer looking joystick with LEDs in the top, probably change color, that sort of thing. So that will be part of the final game. We'll have 4 levels. The Amusement Expo version only had 2. Comparing it to Human Alliance, the guns felt exactly the same. They're mounted guns with force feedback. Nothing terribly special on that force feedback, probably just a standard solenoid that you find in all of these mounted gun games. But yeah, it played a lot like Human Alliance, which was released in, was it 2011 or 2013? Can't remember. Memory's failing me a little bit here. But I thought it was better than the Human Alliance game. And that, in part, it has kind of these achievements or goals, which is a little bit like what they did in Operation Ghost. And so it has you going for that, which makes the play a little more interesting. The graphics certainly are much better. They appeared to be 1080p running at 60 frames a second the whole time. A lot more particle effects, better lighting engine, more interesting weapons from what I saw. And so just overall, it just feels like a more polished version of what Human Alliance was supposed to have been. Of course, different story, dealing with the Dinobots and something like that, but it was hard to really get a feel for what that was going to be just because not all of the cutscenes were put in place yet. And so it felt like you were kind of jumping into the middle of the story of whatever was supposed to be involving the Decepticons controlling the Dinobots. But if you're familiar with the Transformers series, then you probably know all that anyways, so not a big deal. But just as a standard cooperative shoot-'em-up game, it seemed to hit all the marks, so I think it's one that will be doing pretty well. And it's being produced by Ogashi. He was responsible for producing Jumbo Safari, Ocean Hunter. He's worked on Operation Ghost and Ghost Squad, I believe. Also the Let's Go Jungle and Let's Go Island series, so the producer certainly knows his way around light gun games. And also I believe he was involved with Transformers Human Alliance. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what any of you fans out there, whether you're Raw Thrills or Adrenaline or Sega fans or just arcade fans in general, what you think of these games. I mean, it's tough in this industry to come across games that are really crap, and that's because if a game is bad, then usually it's not released to the public. It goes through testing and it doesn't make any money, and they'll go through and redesign some things, and if it just turns out that they realize they're wasting their money, then the game's just canceled. And so that happens every once in a while, but yeah, that doesn't seem to be happening with any of these. Certainly be looking forward to playing the final versions of these. I try to reserve any final judgments on the games for the final software, and so but even then sometimes the software changes. Like today I just got my hands on a new software build of Cruisin' Blast, and it looks like I'm about 20 editions behind, and so I think most of that's bug fixes and whatnot, but I'm certainly interested in seeing how the changes are going to be. But I guess just to end this off with a little bit of news, I mean, the site has been a little slow lately as far as posting stuff. That's just because there hasn't been a lot that's been coming out there. I know of some things that have been going on, but I don't know a lot, enough to write a post about. One is Superbike's 3 development. But that's all we really know. Somebody sent me a link to, or I should say his name, J. Debbie. Thank you, J. Debbie. Always sending me great tips. And so he sent me a link to trademark filing for Superbikes 3. But I reached out to Raw Thrills and they said we don't comment on games in development, so kind of just ends there until we find a picture of it out in the wild being tested. So I wouldn't be surprised if a trademark's already been filed for it, if it is out there somewhere, so let us know. There's also, I posted this week, M2, a Japanese development company, has resurrected an old concept from 1988 for a vertical scrolling shoot 'em up called Ninja Soldier, and so you can read about that more on the website, but that has a very good possibility of heading out west, and that might be on the X-Arcadia board, might not be, not 100% sure because they've not announced anything along those lines, but I'm certainly still looking forward to X-Arcadia. I'm not sure when I'll have my own hands on one of those, but that's, to me, one of the most exciting developments, at least for an operator of my caliber, is to have something a lot like a modern Neo Geo MVS to be able to offer a lot of new games, and it'll certainly increase the number of games that we can save come to video arcades per year, because right now it's usually somewhere between 25 to 30 games, and so with X-Arcadia, if it really explodes, and I think it might be, because when I was talking to the CEO of the company said that they now have 30 developers interested in creating content for it, and that's up from 10 when I first talked to him. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of content coming our way through that kit. So whether or not Ninja Soldier is going to be one of those, I don't know. But I think it would be great if it is. So yeah, that's your update for now on all of the games coming to the arcade market, and we'll, as always, be keeping our eyes open for anything else that's going to be testing sometime soon. But of course, sometimes, as I mentioned, things don't get through test. You might remember Dance Central 3 was spotted on test with Cruisin' Blast when it was called Cruisin' Adventure, I think it was, or yeah, it was Cruisin' Adventure, then it became Cruisin' Redline, then it became Cruisin' Blast. But yeah, we've not seen or heard anything about Dance Central 3 since, or Qbert that Raw Thrills was working on, or Splash that Raw Thrills was working on, or Nex Machina Arcade. And so sorry, Raw Thrills, it feels like we're picking on you. Just I guess all those titles we've seen on location test, just they ended up not getting produced. But anyways, thanks for watching, and comment below as to what games you hope to see. Of course, those three that I mentioned are all based on some sort of existing IP, and so that's still a popular way to go in the arcade business, as opposed to coming up with something completely original. Yeah, let us know what you would like to see. Oh yeah, we also have House of the Dead Scarlet Dawn, which I'm hearing might be at IAPA, and so I think that kind of confirms for us that it's definitely coming west. But as I always said, I would be shocked if the House of the Dead 5, we could call it, is not coming out west. There's just too much interest in it for Sega to let that money not go their way. So yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next vlog.